Welcome back, everybody. This is the Pay Me in Plane Tickets podcast, and I'm your host, Jelani. Today, we talk with Mike Schibel, who's a Southern California native and the founder of Travel with Meaning, a travel brand that hosts podcasts, events, and workshops, all centered around travel. Mike shares his journey on how he built this travel brand that encourages community and togetherness. We also touch on his early years, the leap of faith that led to his entrepreneurial pursuit, and his overall outlook on the future. As always, we end with our patented Pay Me in Plane Tickets questions and see where he lands on the scale. Special guest, Mike Schibel, with Travel with Meaning. And I want to say he's been an inspiration to me because I discovered him through Khalil Kinsey. So I was out in Pepperdine University for the Kinsey Collections art show. And I wanted to learn more about the Kinsey collection. I discovered Khalil Kinsey, and I discovered Khalil Kinsey through Mike Schibel's podcast, Travel with Meaning. And so I am so glad to have him on finally and to pick his brain, pick his travel story. So welcome from LA.
Hey man, honored to be here. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that the connection came through the Kinsey family. I mean, that just is what a blessing on every level.
Perfect. Yeah, so I guess you guys knew each other beforehand, or
Yeah, I've known Khalil since I think we were 13, 14 years old.
wow. Yeah.
We grew up together, and then I've just been fortunate to know not only him but the family for many years, and watch the entire Kinsey collection really just develop from their home to their own personal collection to where it's turned into today. Just this incredible work of art and education process.
Yeah, no, I was definitely inspired by that family too. And I appreciate that you did highlight that family and just, I mean, his son, Bernard Kinsey's son. So I appreciate you bringing some spotlight to him because art does go unnoticed sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting, and with them, it's art, it's education, and it's just the letting people know what they don't know. And the Kinseys have done such a tremendous job of bringing light to African Americans who not only just were exceeding and just exceptional people, but in their arts and their crafts and everything they do. And the Kinseys themselves are like the most extraordinary people you'll ever meet.
Very true.
Bernard himself, I mean, Miss Kinsey Shirley is probably one of my favorite people, but Bernard is like not just a powerhouse professional, but like he also is one of the very first African American park rangers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like one of my favorite stories about him. And he just, I don't know, he always, every time I was with him as a kid, he would inspire us to travel, take us places, and he just always just such a
Beautiful.
good conversation and wonderful person. So thank you for even sharing that side of it.
No, perfect. I also want to give you congratulations on your 100th episode because I am a
Oh,
subscriber.
appreciate. I really deeply, honestly, that means the world to me. Thank you so
No,
much.
it's a huge accomplishment. So before we get started, so how did you start this podcast, this whole Travel with Meaning brand?
Yeah, great question. So originally, Travel with Meaning started as a yoga and wellness kind of retreat system,
Wow.
and we did our first retreat. I think it was 2015.
Okay.
Uh, and we took a group of people to Bali, and I quickly realized I love being in Bali. I love certain aspects. I didn't like the retreats aspect of feeling like I needed to chase people to take a trip. It just didn't
I see.
feel authentic to me. And what I missed was my backstory in leaving my career as a talent agent, and I bought a one-way ticket. Um, I started interviewing people over the course of my travels, and it really allowed me to realize how alike everyone truly is. And over the course of being back home for a couple of years, especially after that yoga retreat,
Yeah.
um, I started just hosting these live events. I started hosting live events as a way to bring together like-minded travelers
Mhm.
and to interview different people that had travel stories that maybe they've never shared or told anyone else or anything like that. And that just really kind of built a momentum, and community grew from that. And from the wonderful turnout we were getting for live events, I just started to say, hey, what else is possible? And launch the podcast in 2019.
Beautiful. Okay, so basically, it started out as uh, siphoning off the Bali yoga trip sort of retreat sort of thing, and then you moved it
Yeah,
into its own sort of experience kind of a humble experience with travel with meaning.
Yeah. It really, you know what? It went from like, what is a yoga wellness retreat to travel stories and believing that
Mm,
we all have travel stories that have impacted our life and their career and our career. What is something maybe you haven't thought about in X number of years, or maybe never
right.
told anyone, and finding that through line amongst people of who we are. And truly, there's only two things that'll happen when you hear a travel story. Either A, I should say one, because I said two things. One, you either have your own connection.
Yeah.
Talk about going to New York, and we have completely different stories, but something resonates within you for a similar story. And then the second thing is you're like, I want to go there.
Right.
And you either one or those two things happen. And that's the sweet spot when you look into travel. And so it really turned into the yoga wellness thing, I think was just kind of my jumping off the plate, my way to kind of figure something out. And then the bringing people together, that's what I've always just loved to do. And using the catalyst of travel stories as kind of that pinpoint.
That's beautiful. Okay, so now it's much different from myself coming from the city where yoga retreats aren't as talked about, but definitely being from LA, you hear that a lot more. You're definitely in that community.
Mm,
So
mm.
give us a bit of a background of where you're from and then how you got to sort of express that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that you brought that up on a couple levels. Because also at that time I was living in Venice Beach. I'm currently in
Mm,
Santa Monica, but I was living in Venice Beach. I felt like everyone was doing yoga retreats.
right.
I really went down the path of doing it because I had a really good relationship and contact with a phenomenal hotel in Bali, and they were like, "Bring people. We'll bend over backwards for you," basically. So
Okay.
I was like, "Cool. Let's figure this out." Um, yeah, so that's how I got down that path. For myself, I'm born and raised in Southern California. Grew up in a really, really special place. Grateful for that, but grew up my whole life wanting to get out of there, knowing that the world had so much more to offer and so much more to teach me that I just always had kind of a hankering to get out and see what's up and really just connect with people. And that's always been kind of my guiding light. I think any big moments in my life, whether it's losing a job, losing a relationship, or whatever that looks like, travel is
Right.
always been that thing that allows me to recenter and refocus on what matters. And so that's kind of what really has brought me full circle. And this whole travel story thing is something that was really a passion and a hobby that I was doing alongside of working in digital agencies or working, in the creative space. And it's something I just couldn't stop. It's something that I really have just been so passionate about that I've just been obsessed to want to do more and more. And it's really just consuming in a way that says there's ways that we can use this for good and believe in travel and travel stories as a currency that we can all use together to exchange for really just powerful feelings and experiences.
Very powerful. And as a youngling, were you always traveling?
Mm. So growing up, we did travel. My family would take us. We have like a lake house in northern Minnesota. We would go to
Okay.
every summer, so that was a big deal. We would take trips. We would, I was definitely fortunate and grateful that we got to take some trips. But my mom was the one who would really go on more trips, whether it's with girlfriends. She
Mm,
went, whether it was like Paris or China or whatnot. She would take trips, and that was always kind of like that little wanderlust excitement that I would see and use her as like a really big inspiration.
right.
But from the moment I went to college, all I wanted to do was study abroad. And actually, I should back up. Is my senior year in high school, all I
Yeah.
wanted to do was like I had this fantasy of like going to Europe after high school,
Okay.
and like I don't know, just had this weird fantasy of what that would be.
All right.
And all year I would talk to all my friends like, let's go, let's do this, we can drink, blah blah blah. Man, when it came down to it, nobody wanted to go.
I knew
Nobody,
you were going there.
everybody backed out. But I went, and
Right.
it wasn't so much like um Thompson, where I'm just got a backpack by myself or something. Like my mom found me a tour group. I went on a tour group.
Wow.
It was great. I met people, but it was still that comfort zone or outside
Yeah.
your comfort zone of like, I didn't know anyone. It was still
Yeah.
that thing of leaning into what that was and experiencing that trip for the first time and coming home and knowing that like I was changed. And
Right.
yeah, that was big for me.
So you were inspired by your mom, but that also sounds like as if that was your first solo trip.
Mm.
Was it?
Um, Yeah, that definitely was. I mean, I took yeah, no, that was definitely my first solo trip because I'd taken other trips growing up, like Boy Scouts or other
Okay,
things where
gotcha.
like
Yeah, yeah,
you knew people. This was like I knew no one. So much so like um arrived a day early to this trip, right?
wow.
To the point where like I uh I arrived in Heathrow and here I am, this like 18-year-old kid, and like my bag was like the last to come off the conveyor belt, and I was like all excited, like it arrived. Like customs grabbed me. They're like, why is this kid so excited? Like going through all my stuff. And like, I just kept saying to them, like, hey, the tour's waiting for me. They're going to be wondering where I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, lo and behold, like I get out there, nobody there. Like, well, what do you do now? And so like I somehow remembered that I had like the itinerary printed up, right? There's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell phones.
Right.
So I was like, cool. Remember getting in a cab and like take me to the hotel. I didn't have money for the cab. So I get to the
Good.
hotel and like I convince them to pay for my cab. Like, you'll get taken care of. Don't worry. Pay for the cab. Cool. I get to the hotel. They're like, sorry, we don't have any rooms for you. And at this point, like now I'm like, all right, I'm about to kind of break down. I'm like, what do you mean? Like now they're telling me I arrived early. I get there. They're like, all right, something for you. But they basically put me like in a janitor's closet with like a rollaway bed. Like, no joke.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
and I just remember like I just remember like kind of like freaking out, somehow figuring out how to call my parents collect, and like crying to my mom, and like her and her little Yoda like wisdom being like, this is all part of the adventure. You'll be okay. Like blah, blah, blah.
Oh
But
gosh.
yeah, so yeah, that was my first like experience solo adventure for sure.
Jeez. Okay, so it sounds like it was an adventure, but it started off pretty rocky.
Yeah, you know what? It started off a little,
Off the cuff.
memorable. Yeah, whatever it was. Like I was like, but not the way you wanted it to go. That is for sure. But hey, all works out. I think as travelers and like
Yeah, it's
as we
natural.
learn now, I mean, yeah, now like those are the stories that are made. Like I wouldn't have had the great story if I'd be like the tour met me, whatever.
Right.
Now it's a
Yep.
story. So I think with travelers we learn like if you survive, you have a story to tell.
Exactly. That's very true. Very true. And then so was that first solo trip? How long were you there for? How long were you in Europe?
So that trip, that was like a 3 week tour.
Oh, 3 week tour. Wow. Okay.
It was good. It was like again, it was like a
Yeah.
bus tour and like solo, but like I didn't know anyone and like
Yeah.
we'd have some free time, but like no, we did like England, France, and some Italy, and yeah, I just remember going home and then going to college and being like, wow, all I want to do is travel.
Right. You got bit with the bug.
Indeed, indeed.
And then so you were bit with this solo travel bug. Did you end up venturing off into other places solo?
So what I actually did was so from there, like on that trip, no, that trip I was like, or maybe I did a couple random little afternoon things, but I was pretty much with this group. And from there, it was like I knew I wanted to get back to Europe. I had this
Gotcha.
yeah, this wanderlust was lit. And so from there, I studied abroad, like my junior year in college, and that was more. I knew one person going, and we made friends, but I would do a lot of solo kind of trips by myself. I did like spring break by myself to Egypt. I would do like random road trips by myself. Like I was leaning into that much more, and that was probably my bigger catalyst of like what's out there
And where did you study abroad?
in London.
Okay, you studied abroad in London, even though
In
your first
London,
trip. You got you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it
I
kind of
went
all
back to
rolls into one.
London.
Right.
Yeah, I went back to London. I felt like it just was a place I kind of knew and loved, and but also growing up in LA, I always wanted that big city feel. Like I've always wanted to be a New Yorker, and then or something of that nature, right? We're like, I don't
Right.
know, LA. That's what we want. That. So London kind of hit and ticked every box for me and allowed me to kind of experience that. Um,
Okay.
but more than anything, it just kind of opened me up to like, oh, hey, you could take a train to go to
Yeah.
Dover or somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. No, because it's actually more so for you. Uh, I would say it's tougher for you to travel places like us in the Northeast. We have so many access to trains and flights, and we can kind of go anywhere we like to. DC's right down the street. You have Maine is right there. You can we can fly to to London, sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
rather quickly. But in LA, you're stuck in traffic, or you have to really kind of plan before you go somewhere. As you mentioned, you went to uh, Minnesota up there. So
Yeah. We can, and this is kind of one of my favorite things. We can unpack that. And like, I've learned, later in life, especially doing this a lot, that, yeah, I agree with you. Like the accessibility and like trains and ease that
yeah,
you have on the East Coast. And I looked at that growing up, even because I did then transfer, like my later years in college, I transferred schools to Boston. And I loved that I could get up and down the corridor super easy. But then realizing like growing up in LA, like, oh, I could take a road trip down to San Diego or Palm
yeah,
Springs or something. And it's like how you just look at what travel is and where you're going or how you're getting there. That is kind of that bigger kind of conversation.
do you have a country count?
Have
Because
a
it sounds like
country count.
yeah.
I do. I'm not really good at that. It's funny. Like I love to ask everyone else, but like I'm not. It's 46, but
Oh wow, nice.
I only know because I counted it the other day randomly. But I've never. I don't know. I've never been country count person, even though I love to ask everyone else. So,
Yeah, you know what? We're on the same boat.
but where are you
I
at?
I don't even honestly. I don't think I really know. I'd have to. I now rely so much on technology, so everything sits in Kayak for me, and so I have to add stuff to Kayak for me to know. Oh, this is the number I'm at, and I haven't looked at my Kayak
Kayak.
app.
I'm just curious. Why is that? Why is that your app of choice?
So I use Kayak just to sort of hold my travel wallet, so to speak. But I I'm fairly loyal to one airline, and I just source it into Kayak, and I source the whatever the hotel or the Airbnb information right into there.
Got
But
it.
yeah,
You want to
it's
shout out your airline?
United.
There you go.
I'm
All right.
United baby.
Okay.
All right, so you don't so I guess you said 46 is your number, right? Yeah, probably a little more or less.
Give or take. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's what I counted up like last week, but I'm gonna stick with that for today.
I like the number. It's a good number. I'm trying to get
Feels good.
there. Okay, so do you have any favorites or standouts of your solo travels?
Mm,
Hmm. Something that like a place you went to and you were just
yeah.
inspired by.
So, well, to create some context, so after I studied abroad and I went to college, sorry, I was in college, then I studied abroad.
Yeah.
Then I transferred schools to Boston, came home to Los Angeles to work in entertainment industry for, I don't know, a decade plus. But from there, I bought a one-way ticket and traveled solo for almost a year. So from that conversation, any standout places there's quite a few. I like to mention New Zealand a lot just because I think it's environmentally, I think just
Yeah.
nature wise, just people wise, like it just has so much to offer that I know it's on people's like list and whatever that looks like, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's just one of those places that just for me like did so much for me. I also look at like Southeast Asia,
Okay.
which I think has a lot of like interesting components to it because um it's one of those things where like it's very much in your face at times, right? Like Bangkok or big cities, like they are. But then when you could peel back and you could be somewhere like in Laos or like Luang Prabang or like remote
Yeah.
villages, like and you're completely out of your comfort zone and you're
Yeah.
completely like experiencing a different lifestyle. Like that is just wow. That is like this. We're on this big ball spinning through the universe, and like there
Yeah.
are different people and different things. At the end of the day, we are all more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
And I think to kind of answer your question, one of the big standout things for me was seeing people in like a small rural village in Thailand or somewhere else, and like on paper, this guy maybe has like nothing, right? In the mentality of nothing, but they are the and he is the happiest person in the world. Big smile, happy, whatever that looks like. And that's where this whole like through line of like we're all similar as far as like things we want in our lives or for our family or that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
The basic
And so like
needs.
learning that, yeah, and experiencing that like was more, I don't know. I don't know if you've experienced, but every time I come back from a trip, it's like I don't really need all the stuff.
Yeah.
And so like that was one of those big moments in experiencing that and watching that and seeing that of like, what are your needs versus your wants? Well, one other thing I want to share is so when I first bought my plane ticket, I mean, I just left a career plus, like a decade plus, as I mentioned, in entertainment, right? So, um, for lack of a better, like who I was at that time in my life was completely different than here who I am in this moment right now. I mean, that was like
Yeah.
I guess you paint a picture of like an almost an Ari Gold type thing of like from Entourage. Like so I thought I was, right? So I thought.
Right.
And at one point, maybe I've been traveling for 2 months in Australia, and I met this gentleman named Dingo Dave, right, on Fraser Island. Fraser Island is like it's incredible. I think it's the largest sand island of the world off the east coast of Australia. But this guy had told me that, or I heard and I learned from him that he'd never seen, sent, or received an email in his life. And this is like 2011, 2012, something like that. So like, dude should have been on email, right? Running a business. And so I made it like my mission. I was like, I'm going to get this guy on social media. I'm going to get this guy on email. And like, here I am, like, I want to change him. And I ended up finding the only working computer on this island to show him my email. And he just made jokes the whole time. I recorded him seeing my inbox and he made jokes the entire time. And he kept saying, if you want to learn, you go to nature. And it took me so many years to realize that this dude was teaching me versus me trying to teach this dude.
Yeah. You got the script flipped on you.
Just opened my eyes and my ears finally.
That's shocking. He's never even heard of an email, because that's like my life.
Well, he'd heard of it. He just never had participated in it. And like I say is that, when I realized he was the one teaching me, I just never got his email, so I couldn't thank him.
So you took the leap of faith to Australia, the one-way ticket.
Indeed.
Now, my question about Australia. So did you run into any pretty gnarly insects, birds, bugs, name it?
You know what? I did have some spider encounters. Australia is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely just incredibly beautiful, and like people are lovely, and just like it's a good time. But like plants will kill you. It's crazy. It's like there are some things there that you need to be aware of, like snakes, plants, spiders. I'm not really much of a insect person, so yeah, I was lucky enough that I didn't have any crazy encounters, but yeah, I mean, I had a couple of spider encounters that like definitely had me sleeping with one eye open. Yeah, there were a couple of this. If you ever Google a wolf spider,
Okay,
these
I'm
things
very
are
sure
like,
I've seen it, like on some of these Google pictures from Australia.
yeah, crazy. Now they're not supposed to be harmful or whatever, but like
Yeah,
it's the last thing you want to encounter. I mean, it's like the size
the
of my
visuals.
head. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Okay. So you take this leap of faith, you get inspired to create your own brand that sort of separates from the yogi retreats. How do you feel about, and you've been doing this for over a decade, over a long period of time. How do you feel about the travel industry or the travel media space, if that is what you're supposed to call it?
I feel it is a very exciting time in this space that we can still create whatever is possible. I think there is a wonderful opportunity to get back to authenticity and steer away from just the quick hit of what a Instagram post is. I'm not going to completely bash the influencer conversation or social media for that level. Is that we all kind of have our take on what that is, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. And I like to refer to social media as a necessary evil. It is. But I believe it is a wonderful time and opportunity for the travel industry, and starting with like DMOs, destination marketing organizations, tourism boards, to really be the leaders in this conversation of what is authentic stories, and telling it in two different fronts. It's not just bringing in the influencer into your market and having them run amok and put some stories on Instagram and leave the market. To me, it really has to be told two ways. It has to be told inside, going out. What are the local stories? What are their experiences? Why do they love where they live? What is their experience leaving to coming back with appreciation? At the same time, what is your story as an outsider, something coming in? What are you experiencing? To create this like cohesive 360 experience. So to answer your question, like I believe it's an exciting time. I believe that nobody's doing it right, and I use that word loosely as far as right, because everyone's different. But I believe there's a wonderful opportunity to take things like our conversation here and the Travel With Me podcast as ways to really kind of lead in this new kind of direction, in this new dawn of travel, of how we really can authentically connect with travelers and not just beat them up to sell and push travel, but to inspire them to want to have that trip or experience that trip.
I really appreciate what you stated there, because I think there is a bit of a balancing act between the marketing side of sort of the travel industry and how they market one particular place or one particular property to go to. But then it kind of has this other side of this polar opposite where it may be draining from that community or the natives that live there or the travelers that go there kind of go there just for the aesthetic and not necessarily for the culture. So I do agree that it has to be sort of this not just sell so hard as you mentioned, but go in
Yeah.
there for the authenticity.
Here's the thing: if you do it right, and we keep using this word right, if you do it in a authentic, encouraging manner, you don't need to sell. It sells itself. And so that's where I look at, again, this two side. You have to learn the stories of the locals, right? To have an understanding. But it doesn't mean that they just have to talk about their business. There is something that with travel and whatever that could be. Travel for them doesn't mean getting on a plane. It could be. It could also mean a different part of their town that they want to talk about, different aspects that they want to share about that have a central component to what makes this place so different and what makes this place so unique, even not even different, unique. And then for that outside traveler coming in, like, what is their experience? What is this outcome or this experience that made it so exciting that they want to tell others to come and have that moment?
I agree with you. Yeah, no. From learning from Bernard Kinsey, I think they started their travels just going to national parks. They didn't necessarily have to go outside the country. So
And I'm going to ask you this, and this is something probably one of my favorite things. Do you know what the dictionary definition of travel is?
I'm ashamed to say I don't.
No, I wouldn't be ashamed because I mean, I'll tell you, I've asked major hospitality CEOs, and people don't know this, which is the best. According to our friends in the dictionary, travel is to go from one place to another, generally over a long distance. Now, what I like to say, coming through this pandemic and this new dawn of travel, if there's anything we've all learned, is that travel isn't about going far. Right? Sometimes it's about going to a different part of your neighborhood. Sometimes it's an inside job. But how we look at it is a different story. So I believe all of us, especially you and me having these conversations, we are here to reshape and rechange on some level what we all believe travel is. And in looking at it that way is like that's where I come back to your question of what travel media. It's not that I'm kind of poo-pooing anyone what they've done or who they are. I just believe that we can all take a better step in going forward in having it connect everyone from the industry to the consumers to the media and do it in an authentic space. Like user generated content, UGC,
yeah.
originally when it was started was supposed to be that. And then it was, then it was Kardashian, right? Then it was
Right.
hijacked by everyone getting likes and follows and making money, which no disrespect, I get. But getting back to the core and the essence of what authenticity should be, tell me that story. Get me there. I'm gonna buy a ticket. I'm fired up. Like I want to hear your story.
That's very true. And I think that that perspective um needs to be highlighted on a grander scale because you know uh there was a travel expo in New York City recently. And you just saw sort of the big brands and the big cruise ships and some of there were some travel adventures, and of course they're there because they are there to sell, so they need to have that in person touch, and there's that goal. But I think your perspective is right. At least balancing that with somebody just sharing their travel story or having a much more authentic travel experience would be nice to have.
Yeah, and let's be realistic. I mean,
It's a business.
sales have to sell, right? It's business.
Exactly. They
It's
have
still
to sell.
business. And at the end of the day, they do have margins and ROIs and things they need to
Yeah.
do. However, as a whole and as a direction, as campaigns you want to do, if you start from the core of what it is and work around that, then I think there's more avenues for a greater return versus let me beat you up over the head with this opportunity.
Right, right. And also, I don't want to, down the expo. The expo was really informative, and it opened my eyes to a bunch more places I didn't even know were selling something, that there was opportunity
Mm,
to travel there. So
mm.
it definitely, I don't want to down it. It was definitely a positive experience.
I get it, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about. Travel adventure show, and like I just experienced it myself in LA, and
Yeah.
um yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, what I look at is the consumer facing show,
Mm.
and part of their job is to stoke the fire and get people excited. Now, it is not always the open-minded consciousness traveler that is showing up for these shows. But if you're running a business, you have to have a balance of what that is. Now, once you get people enrolled and they want to go to Samoa or Fiji or Hawaii or Canada, whatever it is, I believe it's the destination, the hotel, the tour operators opportunity to start to sprinkle in what that could look like for either a transformational experience or just opportunity to open their eyes. And how they get to that point, that's a whole nother, conversation.
Of course, I agree. Been interviewing. You've been growing this travel with meaning brand a lot. Have you? What has the interviews you've actually conducted? Has anybody inspired you or taught you a quick lesson that you can share?
Dude, so many. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes I get to have these conversations with really just incredible people, as I'm sure you can relate to, and that like
Yeah,
I sometimes I can't wait to put it out because like I'm so excited for somebody to hear the story and like realize that like you literally are hearing someone's personal travel diary on some level.
yeah.
It just fires me up. A few people that like I could think of. One is Phil Rosenthal from the Netflix show Somebody Feed Phil.
Oh yes, yes.
Told me a story about like the first time this guy ever went to Europe, and this was like I feel like it was in the early '80s, and DHL, the carrier,
Yeah.
when they first started, they were literally like for people to take packages with them on a plane. They would give you a free ticket and say, "All right, cool, you're going to Paris today or tomorrow. You have 10 packages. When you get on the other side, there's be someone with a DHL sign. You give them the packages, show up for your return flight in 5 days, whatever, something like that."
Mhm.
And I thought that was, I just loved hearing not only his first experience, but I loved hearing the evolution of that brand. Someone else, and it goes back to almost something you brought up earlier, is Salerno Masekela,
Yes.
who's someone like I have admired this dude forever. I love him as the voice of um, extreme sports on ESPN and all his work, but his stories are legendary storyteller as is, but his stories about his father is the late great Hugh Masekela, just a very legendary jazz player who was exiled out of South Africa. They went back together when Hugh was on tour with Billy Joel. And Salema's stories of being there and being a surfer in South Africa and being there and experiencing things that are just mind-boggling and all that are just blew me away. And so did they inspire me? I think every traveler's stories inspire me on a lot of levels, but like those deep stories is kind of why I come back to doing what I love about this is like those stories that maybe you haven't thought about it, maybe you haven't told anyone. Is really kind of I think where that magic really happens.
I agree. So Salema is one of my favorite people, persons
Mm,
in the world right now.
he's just an extraordinary man. Like
No,
I
he
really
is.
just
He is.
appreciate that person.
Yeah, he's definitely an inspiration. He keeps the motivation going, even when I'm failing to catch some of these waves.
I will say if you haven't listened or any of your listeners haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of my longer episodes because it's hard not to just cut him off. Like his voice
Yeah,
is just perfect to listen to, and his stories are just like epic. It's just I do it zero justice, and I just literally just sat there just in awe and just appreciating this conversation.
what is next for Travel with Meaning? What's
Mm,
coming up?
great question. That's almost something we started talking about this. What is the media doing and all this stuff, and I'm really focused now on really creating this conversation of travel stories as a currency, and how do we get DMOs and tourism boards and brands to start looking at this of the importance of these travel stories. So the next kind of 2.0 next steps for what we're doing is working a lot with these destinations and spending a lot more time in certain markets and having opportunities to curate these experiences and campaigns for markets that do what I talked about, telling stories inside and outside to really create this cohesive unit and doing it in a way that travel with meaning as a brand name can work for all these components. I mean, there's honestly a reason why I didn't call this Mike's travel blog or Mike's travel stories, because I've always believed that travel is a we sport, not a me sport. And for me, it's like taking these destinations and like if you're France or you're Fiji, like, what, you're not competing. Why can't we, like, you're all telling travel stories that actually do the same thing, driving authentic traffic. And so for me, it's working with these wonderful opportunities and organizations to share what magic they have inside, at the same time bring over people from our community to experience this and share those stories. So really finding ways to continue to take this authentic stories that are being shared and to take it to the next level of now helping to honestly sell travel without selling travel. Not beat people up and being like, you should go. But I'll tell you this, and it stems back, it really stems from this. Second or third time I ever hosted a live show in LA, I had somebody come up to me and they said, sell me a trip. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, I just listen to people for an hour and a half talk travel stories. He's like, I'll go anywhere. So for me, that comes back to this authentic conversation. If we do that in a way, then we will be selling, promoting, encouraging people to check out your destination without having to be like, sell. Now, if there's a way to put something on top of that that says, here is your discount, here is your opportunity, here's your, unique experience, cool, that's great. But my goal is to work with these individual destinations and brands to really kind of highlight stories that encourage, inspire, and support travel.
That's beautiful, because it sounds like basically you're saying travel is all about meaningful connections.
Indeed.
Basically, I know there's more to go, but I don't want to take too much more of your time. So I definitely want to end off with some fun, quick questions here.
Okay.
So if you did have to get paid in plane tickets, which airline are you going for?
Air New Zealand.
Wait, they must only fly to New Zealand,
yeah,
right?
They fly other places.
Okay. All right. Do you have a go-to credit card, debit card you use for points?
Used to be the Chase Sapphire.
Oh, okay. Nice. And then I know we talked all the good things about traveling. Do you have a traveling pet peeve?
That's interesting. I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but like, I do hate that moment where you land somewhere and everyone gets up and you're like, it's going to take time, and I think every time that happens, I'm like, why can't we just have the windows open up and we all just get to go out that way? I think it's lining up to get on the plane and lining up to get off the plane. Kind of drives me crazy sometimes.
I wonder if it's just, I guess if you're on a flight, you just naturally want to it lands. All right, I'm out. I'm going.
I listen, by the way, I get it. And I'm guilty of all of it. I'm just like, I don't think anyone's ever asked me what my pet peeve is on that. But like, that's one that I look at, like that process, like, as I like to say to people, you just got to pack all that patience in the world, because it's not the if, it's the when. And when is going to have to be like, all right, I'm going to let it go.
Understood. Okay. So you're traveling somewhere. Are you going to go with Airbnb or a hotel?
Hotel.
Oh, we get a lot of Airbnb lovers over here.
You know what? I am a big fan of a boutique hotel. There's nothing I like more than walking in a really nice lobby. It just feels good. I don't hate Airbnb, but the fact of the matter is, people like to go because they can totally just be on their own. But the fact of the matter is, like, if I get there and like I have to figure something out and I can't just call the front desk, or something doesn't work and I can't get someone to look at it, like, that's going to totally screw everything up for me. Like, and I'm someone who wants to just kind of roll with it. Like, I don't know. And I've stayed at both. Like, I mean, I like what they've done. Airbnb, I mean, I think it opens the economy for a lot of people. But man, I love, I'd rather stay in a hostel sometimes than Airbnb. Like, gotcha. I like knowing people are around. I want to go to my room and chill out. But like, I mean, I'm a social person. I want to like walk through the lobby and be like, what up?
Yeah. Go down to the bar, hang out, talk to the front desk, see what they're doing, what's going on, what's happening.
But at the same time, like, again, like, if I'm going with a small group, maybe we rent a villa somewhere, like, I'm open to that too.
I hear you.
As long as there's somebody else in the group that can fix stuff if they break, like, you're not having me do that.
No. We hear that a lot. We hear also the fact that nobody wants to actually clean or bring their own towels, bring their own washcloths. They're like, I'd rather already just be there and take care of.
I'd rather go camping personally than like the Airbnb half the time. I mean, I really would.
No, I understand. I understand.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're traveling somewhere. Is it going to
mhm.
be a city, a beach, or a mountainous area? And you can
Yep,
mix the both.
all the above. I
All
mean,
of
I'd
them.
rather like, come on, there's great cities that have it all. Like you can go
Yeah.
somewhere like, I mean, technically LA kind of has it all, but I mean, if I had to like, hey, you only get one choice, I'd go beach. I'm a beach
Okay.
person, but that being said, I think there's wonderful sanctuaries in every one of those, elements:
Yeah.
city, beach, mountains.
No, that's South Africa. It's a city, beach, and get mountains too.
There you go.
All right. So last one. One location for the rest of your life.
One location you could travel to for the rest of the night. So, do you live there, or like is it like you're traveling
No, so you live somewhere, but you only could
there?
travel to one place. That's it.
Man, this is a very interesting question.
Yeah. We're putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, dang. Um, I'm probably gonna go with my first thought here. Is just Cabo San Lucas. Los Cabos is. I was gonna go to the family cabin in northern Minnesota, but I was like, winters suck. So why would I go there only for like a couple months out of the year? Cabo San Lucas kind of has it all. I mean,
Okay.
it really has it all. And if I'm living still in LA, then it's easy to get to and um, get some margaritas and some guac and chips. So I'd be good.
I love Cabo. I mean,
There you go.
I typically would stay in San Jose, but and then travel down to San Lucas. But Cabo's beautiful, and it's a great surf place. Great
Yeah,
surf
I mean, I'm all good on all that. So like, yeah, I think we'll stay with Los Cabos.
place. Mike, it has been wonderful talking to you. I've learned so much. I think we've connected a lot on travel, and I think all the listeners will understand and share that and sharing that love.
And I want to acknowledge you for what you're up to and just the love and passion that you have. And I'm very, very intrigued by your origin story. Like what was the kind of the starting point for you to want to start doing this? But more than anything, I just acknowledge you for kind of being there and being a yes to connect with people. That's awesome.
Wonderful, man. I'd love to be on your podcast one day. I gotta get there.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. But until then, I really just can't thank you enough for the opportunity and the honor to share this conversation.
Awesome, awesome.